together. We're here for the start of our annual budget hearings and presentations. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the clerk to call the roll and get our meeting started. Mr. Clerk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, as well as the general public. This is the roll call for the special call meeting for the presentation of the FY2025 budget. The Honorable Catherine F. Rao, District 1.
Present.
The Honorable Carmelita Gums, District 2.
Here.
The Honorable Helen Z. Willis, District 3.
Present.
The Honorable J.C. Sebastian, District 4.
Present.
The Honorable Keosha B. Bell, District 5.
Present.
The Honorable Natasha Williams Brown, District 6. I do show her as present on Zoom. The Honorable Linda B. Pritchett, District 7.
Here.
And the Honorable Mayor Khalid. There he is.
I was looking for my...
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
All right.
I was looking for my little mic. Good evening, everyone. I want to just begin acknowledging that this week we celebrated the 100th birthday of the iconic James Baldwin. He would have been 100 today. He had a famous quote about money. He said that money was like sex. When we didn't have it, we thought of nothing else, and we thought of other things when we did. So, shout out to James Baldwin. Mr. Clerk, please sound the first item.
First item on tonight's agenda is a presentation of FY2025 budget. This will be a presentation by our City Manager, Sharon D. Subadan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening, the listening public, department heads, Finance Department, and everybody who worked hard on getting this budget presentation together. We will go ahead and go through it. It is on the screen for individuals to see, and it should be on the screen in front of you. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, next slide. So it's always good to start the budget process by remembering our mission and vision statements. I won't read them for you, except, well, I will read them actually. The City of South Fulton will be an innovative, diverse community that is safe, environmentally conscious, healthy, transparent, and financially sustainable for all its citizens and visitors. And our mission is every day we will exceed the expectations of our customers as we deliver municipal services with respect and professionalism. Sometimes it's good to remember we are going through the strategic planning process update now, and while that vision may change and the mission may change, these are our guiding principles. Next slide, please. So I always like to start off with saying the consideration and approval of the operating budget is the single most important policy decision that you as a council will make every year. It sets the vision into action and gives us as staff a 12-month roadmap to follow. Next slide. This year, our budget theme is impact-driven. And you may ask, why impact-driven? Because we are intent in fiscal 2025 in building our foundation, in working on our initiatives that we started in 24 and continuing them in 25. We are going to be investing heavily in our parks and facilities with your support, and addressing deferred maintenance. We know that over the years, many of our parks and facilities, we have been doing our best to keep them running, keep them up to par, but we realize that we just have a really long way to go. And so this budget incorporates a significant investment in reducing deferred maintenance. And finally, part of being impact-driven is we have to build our team. Add to that team, develop that team, and help that team to become proficient in implementation. The base budget, next slide please, includes no change in the millage rate, expenditures for continuing operations, annualization of expenses that we know we're going to have. We have absorbed our increases in health insurance in our base budget, and we are asking for a 4% cost of living for all city employees effective January 1st, 2025. We're absorbing the increase in health insurance costs because one of the things that I'm committed to not do is give employees a cost of living and then take it back with increased health insurance. So we know our health insurance is going up. Our new initiatives are continuing to be in the 5 categories as shown: public safety, future city facilities for public service, planning, workforce development, and quality of life. Next slide, please. So the big news is our budget this year is $254.7 million, which is considerably larger than it was last year. Next slide, please. Our general fund budget with our new initiatives, as you can see, is $151 million. This year, for the first time in the city's history, we have developed a 5-year capital plan that we have funded in year 1. In the past, you can clap. It's okay to clap. In the past, you had created a plan so that you knew what was necessary, but you didn't have the resources to be able to fund it. This year, we are proposing that we fund our first year of our 5-year capital plan with our fund balance. Other funds are $69 million for the total of $254,659. Next slide, please. So this slide is our year over year. One question that you'll get from the community is what changed? How much, why is it so much more? Where is the increase? I do want to point something out. In our budget in brief, which is our booklet that we produce for the public that breaks down the budget into digestible language, on our first page, we said the increase was $32.8 million. In actuality, it is $40.43 million. That was a Scrivener's error. So we will be making that correction on our online version. And when we do another print of the budget in brief, we'll make that correction. But as you can see, as you're looking at the various categories, you can see the year-over-year variance, totaling a year-over-year increase of $40.4 million. So our revenue sources, where does the money come from? $185 million, 72% is general fund. We have special funds. This year, we're breaking out our capital funds, most of which is going to be T-SPLOST. Trust and custodial funds, those are funds that have a very designated use, like the tree fund. The enterprise fund is solid waste and any other enterprise fund that we have, and our component unit, which is the SFDA. This is the revenue analysis of our, next slide, please, I'm sorry. This is our general fund year over year. As you can see, we did not see a very large increase in property taxes. We did see a pretty decent increase in title ad valorem taxes, which is TAVT, commonly known, the tax that goes along with purchasing new vehicles. Sales and use tax, that's lost. And sorry, I lost my place. License and permitting, we saw a marginal increase. The other area where we saw a sizable increase year over year is in investment income, and the very last line item is our budgeted use of reserves. We did allocate some use of reserves in 2024, and as previously explained, we're asking for an allocation this year primarily to fund our capital plan and other one-time expenses. The fund balance is not being used to fund any ongoing expenses. So one question that often comes up is, what is special revenue? What does that mean? So this is a breakdown. As you can see, we have grant funds here, T-SPLOST funds here, and all of our funds are listed. The URA bond fund there is our payment for our URA bond. You'll recall that you took a bond to help with some of our early deferred maintenance. So that is continuing to be repaid. A camera fund is listed here, as well as we have some remaining ARPA that we're going to be working hard to utilize and or encumber by December 31st of this year. And this next slide, please. This reflects our tree fund. Again, like I said, our trust and custodial funds, our solid waste fund, Wolf Creek, and the SFDA, which is a component unit of the city. Next slide, please. This just is another display of when we look at our total budget, our total general fund budget, where are all of the, what percentage of our total pie of general fund does each type of revenue make up? Next slide, please. And this is the same display for our special revenue funds. Next slide, please. So in our fiscal 25 budget, we are, this is the good part, this is the where's the money going, expenditures. 151 million on the general fund side. We've already spoken about our capital for a total of 185 million in those areas. One question that has come up is, what is the status of our fund balance, and can we afford to take funding from our fund balance? Well, this shows what we estimate our fund balance would be at the end of fiscal 24, and even with this amount of funding coming from fund balance, we will still have sufficient reserves to cover all of our financial policy requirements, which is 25% of the prior year expenditure for reserves, as well as our designated reserves will all be accounted for. So if the question is asked, can the city afford to fund our capital plan, I would say that is a resounding yes. This allows us to using this model allows us to fund our desperate needs without creating any increase to property taxes and or fees. So expenditures by category, this gives you a visual representation of the functions. Oftentimes the quick question may be asked, where does the money go? And so 28.3% goes to public safety, 21.7% to public works, 21.7% to general government, and you'll see many of the other smaller categories displayed. And this is how essentially the money is planned to be spent. And this is one other display of the expenditures by category. So I'm going to stop there. We've talked about revenue. We've talked about no increase in millage rate. We've talked about some high-level use of capital funds. Are there any questions before I continue?
anyone have a question?
All right.
I don't see anyone in the queue. Are we using the queue today?
Fine.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Willis.
So the next meeting will be the public hearing, correct, for the budget?
Yes, we will have a total of 2 public hearings for the budget. One is on the 27th of August in the morning, and then we have an evening meeting, and then the budget will be adopted at a special call meeting. I'll read those dates at the end.
And that'll be a little bit more detailed information with telling us like the itemized numbers that's going into the general fund.
Yes, you will get your budget book. It'll have all the details that will also be available online. This is just my initial presentation. It's not a public hearing. This is kind of the broad overview to launch our budget process.
Okay, thank you.
The chair recognizes Councilman Sebastian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation so far, Madam City Manager. Can you do me a favor? The slide was a little hard to read, the one with all the big numbers. Especially when you spoke about the fund balance. For the benefit of those of us who couldn't read the slide and for the listening public, can you read the exact numbers, what the fund balance is, how much we're taking out, and what's going to be the remainder, please?
Sure. Mr. Clerk, if you can go back to slide number 15. So in fiscal 20, there's fiscal 24 displayed. We did have a one-time use of fund balance for fiscal 24 of 32.211220. Some of that work is incomplete, so that work will continue into 25. Our estimated beginning fund balance for fiscal 25 is $138,430,239. We're recommending $34,187,337 be used to fund our capital, with a remaining fund balance of $104,242,902.
Thank you.
All right, can I continue?
Yes.
Can you jump to slide number 18, Mr. Clerk? So this is the capital plan. Over 5 years, that is a very large number, and of course, many of these numbers are estimated because we don't really know for sure what the cost of construction will be. $269,507,609 over 5 years. You'll see a huge rise in year 2 and 3. That is accounting for our police headquarters, our public safety training, fire facility, and our city hall. Some of that we anticipate we will have to debt finance. We will not be able to take money out of reserves to cover all of that. And then you see it taper off in the out years, but I always say years 4 and 5 of a capital plan are really just a swag, because as a governing body, you will make decisions on different priorities in the out years. So while we're going with kind of what we believe it will be, we're certain that in the out years, that number will be higher. That number is in red because it is not fully funded over 5 years. Next slide, please. And this is our first year, which is funded. This is the general fund portion of it. And the breakdown, it can be shown by department and function. The categories below, just summarizing it, $6 million toward our new buildings, $5 million toward land acquisition for the future, and the operating department CIP of $22.3 million. Next slide, please. So I did slip this in here, not related to capital, but always very important to the council and to residents. We have accounted for events in the budget at the same level as we did in fiscal '24. Now I want to turn a corner and highlight our new initiatives. Next slide. Our first new initiative category is public safety. Next slide. And this gets into more of the detail. In public safety, we are recommending 5 new park rangers, the annualization of 26 positions added to the police department in the mid-year budget, the mid-year '24 budget, 42 replacement vehicles and equipment. The expansion of Station 6 is underway. Once it is ready, we would like to be able to staff it with a new crew. We also want to turn our attention towards hazmat and a hazmat vehicle. While we do some of that work now, we believe that a significantly higher investment is necessary and 100 units of turnout gear for the fire department. Next slide. And we've talked a bit about this before. While we don't anticipate starting our debt service in the beginning of fiscal '25, we have set aside some funding for it should we potentially get there in fiscal '25. Parks, facilities, and grounds at $6.4 million, and some additional facility improvements at $500,000. Next slide, please. Next. So in our planning, we've already talked about the CIP quite a bit. This is a breakout of the funding we intend to put into deferred maintenance in city facilities and parks. And then we're asking for some additional positions in CDRA to expedite land disturbance permit process. It is a pretty detailed process, and with the growth in the city, we believe adding additional resources to it is necessary. We've already talked a bit about, next slide. Thank you. We've already talked about the COLA for employees. We have also talked about the health insurance benefits cost. One other thing that I'm asking the council to support is incorporating the long-term disability premium for all employees and making it available to all employees funded by the city. Currently, we have a fraction of employees that pay for that out of pocket, and when we did our analysis, we realized that it would be significantly less expensive for us to be covered as an entire city as opposed to individuals electing to get long-term disability. I believe the total premium for the entire city is $165,000. So I am asking you to incorporate that as a recommendation. The other thing, a few of you have been working with me on a grants strategy work group, and we haven't met in a few weeks, but one of the things that has come out of that is a necessity to pull grants out and create a division of grants. I am asking for 2 resources in the city manager's office and moving it into the city manager's office so that it can get the attention that's needed, not just pursuing new grants, but managing grants, and in particular, ensuring that grant implementation is happening in the time frame outlined by the grants, and ensuring that we're getting our reimbursements. So I am asking for 2 additional positions in the city manager's office to be able to focus on this. I'm also going to be asking for additional support for our community relations and service, which is an area where we've had tremendous success with answering phones. We're adding a resource in that area to help us to be more effective with See, Click, Fix. And that was everything on that slide. Next slide, please. So quality of life and public infrastructure enhancements. This is a part of what we're suggesting. Another part will live in our T-Splosh, which you'll see that in a moment. The additional improvements for pedestrian safety. When we had our budget retreat, you were all very clear about wanting to see improved sidewalks, infill sidewalks, pedestrian lighting, street lighting, additional traffic calming, widening of sidewalks to accommodate golf carts in certain areas. And so we are very focused on ensuring that these are in our quality of life and public infrastructure enhancements. We also are proposing a community beautification initiative to include a litter reduction program. We're asking for 4 additional street sweepers, 2 large and 2 small, and 2 equipment operators, so that we can increase the frequency of our street sweeping. We also would like to convert our seasonal facility maintenance positions to 5 full-time positions so that we can keep up with the maintenance of our parks. And the Parks Department is promoting a youth development program around creating a Saturday school program, which will be run by certified teachers in the Parks Department. And that will be at no cost to our community. Next slide, please. And so T-Splosh, we use that acronym, the Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, a 1% tax that is specifically for our transportation projects. And we are allocating $25.2 million this year in the 5 categories as outlined, specifically for T-Splosh projects. This will be a very large undertaking, but we believe that we have significant needs. Many of you have seen that we have currently $139 million of construction projects that are underway. Those are progressing as expected. Of that 139, about $6 million, give or take, is the city's general funding. The remainder is T-Splosh, federal funding, and state funding for those projects that are under construction. So lest anybody be concerned that we have not accounted for it, and we're very clear that we have the funding to complete all of our projects. And to your question earlier, Councilwoman Willis, the next meeting is on August 27th. In the interim time, you'll get your detailed budget books. Those will also be made available to the public on our website. State law also requires that we have a hard copy available for citizens to view at our offices at 4715 Frederick. At our regular council meeting, we will also have a public hearing. Actually, it's at 10 in the morning. That's not a regular meeting. Tuesday, the September 10th, Corey?
Yes, my understanding is they wanted to have one in the evening, and the one on the 10th will be in the morning.
Okay.
But we will have our regular meetings in the afternoon.
Okay. So we're doing a public hearing at 10 a.m., the second public hearing. We don't have a public hearing scheduled for the evening at this time. If the council would like to add it, we can. Only 2 public hearings are required for the budget. And then we are asking for budget adoption at a special called meeting because we had a conflict here on the 17th. And so with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to continue to lead the city with my fabulous team. And I want to do a very special thank you to Finance and Public Affairs, to IT, our operating departments, as well as the consultants that support us as we continue to develop the talent in this city. So I'm sure you're going to have many more questions once you get your full budget package, but now I am subject to your questions. Next slide.
All right, the chair recognizes, are you in here again, or is this from the last time? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Sebastian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again for your presentation, Madam City Manager. Just, I guess, a question request. I know we did quite a number of road pavings in the city, both on the T-Splus and some other funding. Is it possible to get like a summary note, something that's publishable, as to the level of activity of road construction and paving that has been completed, say, in the last year?
Yes, we can do. We actually have a document that we keep a rolling total of the paving. So, yeah, and there will be a new resurfacing program that will be in effect in 2025.
Thank you. Something that's publishable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes District 1, Dr. Rao.
Thank you for the presentation, and I particularly appreciate the investment in our facilities. I think you said it was $269 million for our facilities. So before people start calling and asking for rollbacks and all this other stuff, to understand the need is great. I want to thank General Services and Public Work, General Services and Parks and Rec, because I think they've been doing a good job trying to work through a number of investments we need to make in our parks and facilities. I do have two questions, and I recognize that we'll have detailed information forthcoming about what that looks like. As it relates to the facilities, I did not hear, and maybe that's projected out, the fire station for District 7, as well as the cultural center or art center for Cliftondale. Is that in there at all? And then finally, as it relates, this is a Sandtown Park question. The trails, the pavement around our fields is really needs to be looked at. The condition is not good. So as you fine tune, I would just ask that you kind of look at those areas. But other than that, I thank you for the presentation.
Sure. So we have a very detailed, a more detailed capital improvement program, at $22 million. There's a list of projects that would be covered in that.
Okay.
The chair recognizes District 3, Councilwoman Willis.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to make sure, I have a question, and I know we have a detailed budget coming. Is there a reason why we are only staffing 12 new staff hazmats for fire? Are they not requesting for, I only see Station 6 expansion, 12 new staff. Are they not requesting for any other new staff?
So they have some vacancies, and that was the priority, to make sure we had staff to man that ladder. The ladder truck is coming, and we focused around the hazmat. So that's a total of 24 new positions. If you ask Chief, you can always get more people and more stations. We do have the land for Station 7. That was one of the purchases that was made when we did the fiscal 24 budget amendment. And so it's our intention to do site prep and design in year 1 of the CIP.
Okay, and the station on Stonewall Tail, is there any plans to rehab that station or relocate that station, because it is in pretty bad shape?
It definitely is. One of the things that Chief is working on is a station location plan. As you know, we're looking at acquisitions, and what we're trying to do is make sure we marry those two things. And in the out years of the CIP, some of those things will be done. And what we are trying to do is do a thorough evaluation on whether or not it makes sense to renovate or should we build new. So if the station is under capacity, it's probably, and there's nowhere to expand. So Station 6, we're able to expand. We don't always have that ability, and sometimes the station is too far gone for really expansion. We need to tear it down and rebuild, or rebuild on another appropriate site.
Okay. And this budget, does it compensate for the increase in uniform stipends?
It would be, there's enough in the budget to cover.
Okay. Deferred maintenance, I'm a little concerned about that just being $4 million. And the only reason I'm concerned because I know just alone Welcome Park, the roof and the pool, it along with the repairs that we had to make, it wiped out. I mean, it surpassed the $4 million.
Right. It's a significantly larger amount than that. If you looked at, can you go to slide 19 for me?
33 million.
Under slide 19, it shows funding for general services, park and rec, and facilities, and Wolf Creek. A large portion of that funding, which is part of the 22.3, is going to be around deferred maintenance as well as new parks.
Okay. All right, and my last question, and I know, I have two more questions and I'm done. The Community Beautification Initiative, the litter reduction program, does that litter reduction program, I see marketing campaign, and I think that's important, but what's even more important is that we get more frequent litter pickup, because it's going to take a while to change the mindset of the community, and then you have people that's coming through our community that's throwing Popeye's boxes out the window. I mean, I've seen it, and so, is there any way, does that litter reduction program, is that inclusive of increasing head count so we can have more frequent litter pickup and more proactive litter pickup?
Yes.
Okay. And cameras, the flock cameras to catch the violators.
So we've invested a significant amount in fiscal '24 in cameras. We get a regular report on flock, and I think we're down to 4 locations remaining of the 70, close to 70 locations. The other part of the camera program is going well. I think between both, we've invested about $4 million in cameras, as well as additional security for our facilities, and that's a fiscal '24 initiative that will continue to completion. So the flock cameras in particular, all cameras going online are available for the Real-Time Crime Center to see, as well as for code enforcement to be able to recover the data from really all of the cameras that we have out there.
Okay, I'll talk with you offline because there are some areas that are habitual, and I just, if we have cameras in some of these areas, I just don't see why we haven't caught any violators, because there's some areas in our city that are consistent and habitual when it comes to litter. Lastly, I wanted to make sure that we continue to fund our feeding initiative, our Feeding a City initiative to address food insecurity. Every year I have to remind staff to make sure that's included in the budget. And I've talked with Dr. Cooper about some ideas to kind of take the stress off of staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do we have any other questions? I'm checking my texts for Councilwoman Williams-Brown. All right, few closing comments. Thank you, first off, so much for this thorough and more complete than I've ever seen budget. When we walked into then City Council chambers on Stonewall Tell 7 years ago, we had lots of complaints about we had requests, obviously, for speed bumps. We had lots of complaints about blighted property, and there was no money in the budget for those things. And so we created a budget, we created a budget finally for these things that have been neglected by the county. And now we are finally creating a real and complete budget for all of the buildings that were handed to us by Fulton County, neglected for decades. So thank you for including all those things in the budget. I do want to put on the record, before I go and look for another job, I would like a raise. I'm going to be asking for that, so that's going to be coming. And I also want to see the tuition reimbursement that we recently expanded. I would like to see that expanded for mayor and council as well. So those are my two requests. And with that, Mr. Clerk, you can sound the next item.
Next item is adjournment.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
It's been properly moved and seconded. We're going to take this vote in the queue, just because we haven't used it today.
Everyone's not signed in.
Okay, well, we'll just do it by a show of hands then. We tried.
Record that motion approved unanimously. We are adjourned at 6:41 p.m.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. South Fulton forever.
We didn't have any